Okay, we are live once more, and today we are talking about a really important topic, which is the future of privacy. Data, I think, has now become such a hugely important asset to all companies, and it is becoming more important than ever for businesses to be able to personalize their services. And at the same time, consumers are increasingly worried about how companies use their personal data. It can feel sometimes quite creepy when companies know too much. At the same time, customers like personalized services. So what we want to do in this session is to discuss this. And I am super pleased to say that I've got three very experienced panelists with me today. I've got Aoife Sexton from Truata. I've got Carruthers, who is an experienced data leader and author. And I've got Roberto Maranca from Schneider Electric. So what I would like to do is if you could maybe briefly just introduce yourself and really say who you are, where you're from, and what you do in your day job. That would be really useful, I think. Aoife, do you want to make a start?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. And Bernard, it's lovely to be with you today. Greetings from a sunny Dublin. So my name is Aoife Sexton, and I'm the Chief Privacy Officer with Truata. And within Truata, I'm responsible for all matters relating to privacy. So Truata is a company that provides privacy-enhanced analytics solutions and services to customers who wish to unlock insights from data, but to do so in a privacy responsible way. We're a young company. We were founded in 2018 by MasterCard and IBM, and we sit at the intersection of big data, analytics, and privacy. And for example, one of the services we offer is anonymization. And this means we take data sets from customers that contains personal data, and we transform the personal data into non-personal data. And then we carry out analytics on that data. And we give back to the customers rich aggregate insights, which allows the customers then to use that for a myriad of use cases internally, for example, to improve productivity, to improve products and services, or better, maybe to improve their engagement with their customers.
That's great. Thank you so much. How about you, Caroline? Do you want to give us a little overview of who you are and what you do?
Happy to. Thanks, Bernard. So I'm Carolyn Carruthers. I'm the Chief Exec of Carruthers and Jackson. And why I'm here in this position is because I'm also the co-author of two books around data. So one is the Chief Data Officer's Playbook, and the other is Data-Driven Business Transformation. So we wrote the first book just about sharing knowledge, because there's a conversation I was having just earlier. It was a little bit Wild Westy when I first started as a Chief Data Officer, and we were looking for help and support. So we wrote the Chief Data Officer Playbook to kind of share and start that knowledge of sharing with each other. Whereas the Data-Driven Business Transformation book is very much the data book you'd give to a business person to help them understand why data is important. And now I run Carruthers and Jackson, which is basically set off to do the things that we talk about in the book for other organizations. So we help spread data literacy, and we help organizations on their data transformation journeys.
Very good. Thank you very much. Roberto, do you want to let us know what you do at Schneider?
Sure. And first of all, thank you for having me here today. I'm very thrilled to have such a fantastic set of co-panelists here. And Roberto Maranca, I'm with Schneider Electric, and in Schneider, I'm doing data excellence. So I come from a let's say, experience of wanting to become a data leader 6 years ago, when I understood finally what data was, and I understood that data was the thing missing from my let's say work life. And So since then, it's been a passion. It's been a passion that led me to have a few roles in a few big companies, and the latest one is with Schneider. Excellence is really, maybe we're going to talk more about later, but it's really the ability for a company to have whatever data strategy that is supporting whatever business strategy, to have the right boundary conditions, the right method, the right culture, and the right value methodologies to succeed. So that's in essence. And I'm here also because one of my hobbies, let's say, is GDPR for the company, and which now we call data privacy and protection, because definitely GDPR is only one of the many, many regulations that we need to deal with from a privacy and protection point of view.
Very good. So we definitely have a lot of knowledge around privacy on this panel. So maybe we can kick this off with Aoife. And Truata has just published your annual Global Consumer State of Mind report to really I just guess take the temperature and see how do people feel about privacy. Maybe we can use this to set the scene. So maybe you can share with us the key findings from this report and how you feel this paints a picture of where we are in terms of privacy and how consumers feel about that.
Yeah, sure. So as you said, the Truata engaged an independent research company to survey 8,000 individuals across the UK, France, India, and the USA to really understand their attitudes towards businesses using their personal data. And I think it was interesting what was revealed in the survey. For me, two things stood out. I think the first was that consumers care deeply about data privacy. And the second was that they'd like to be more in control of their data. So I think this is borne out by some of the stats. So 77% of global consumers agree that data privacy is essential to them. And this is backed up by the fact that 78% of them have taken one or more steps to reduce their digital footprint. And in fact, at least 63% of consumers say that they would stop buying from brands if they don't demonstrate to that consumer that they're being responsible with their personal data. I think on the control side of things, 77% of consumers believe that they should own their digital selves. Another, perhaps most worrying stat from the survey is the fact that 65% of global consumers have no idea what their data is being used for. And I suppose that's worrying in that we're celebrating the first 2 years of the GDPR being in operation, and yet we still find that 65% of consumers have no idea what their data is being used for. So I suppose an overall remark would be that companies would be well advised to take privacy seriously and to listen to what their consumers are asking for in terms of demonstration by those companies that they are acting responsibly with consumers' data.
Yeah, this is great. And I think, Caroline, do you see, does it resonate with what you're seeing in practice?
Absolutely. And I think it's the really key takeaway that you talked about there for me is that consumers care greatly. And I think that's absolutely, people are starting to learn more that they have the ability to control about this. And that privacy is something that they should be taking seriously, because I'm not convinced that we always have in the past. I think in the past, people have used things, for instance, like social media, and just saw it as a free service. Whereas now they're much more understanding the trade-off that actually what they're doing is paying for that service with data, which is fine, as long as you look at, as Eva was saying, about that you're transparent and open about it. We see lots of examples where maybe companies haven't been as open and transparent as we want them to be and we would like them to be. And what that's generated is a level of distrust, which I think, again, feeds back into the report. And you can see that coming through very clearly.
Yeah, this is a very good point, and one that I always make. For me, if you want to use consumer data and customer data, trust has to be a vital element of this. So you have to build trust with consumers to share data with you, and if you have this trust, they will. And I think we are still going through this early stage Wild West phase where companies basically try to get their hands on customer data in any way they possibly can without necessarily telling their consumers what they're collecting and how they're using it. And this is important. Before we go on, I just want to acknowledge that we've got how many have we got? About 10,000 people on the stream already, which is pretty epic. And please let us know where you're from, and use the comment functions in LinkedIn to ask questions. I've noted down 1 or 2 questions already. Someone was asking about GDPR and whether this was just a hobby or not. Maybe we can answer some of those questions later on.
Of course, it was a joke, right? So it's because it's a very, very serious thing that is very connected to trust. Yeah, so it's not a hobby. It's just that as a data officer, doesn't as a person in data, it doesn't happen all the time. You do also a lot of GDPR or privacy stuff. That was the point.
Absolutely. So I'm just having a look through the stream. We've got Bettina from Indianapolis. We've got someone from Kansas City, from Afghanistan, from Morocco, New York, London, India.
Wow.
From the UAE, Ritu from India, Margarita from Madrid, again, Dubai, Bangladesh, Buenos Aires in Argentina, Mexico City, Saudi Arabia, Ethiopia, Jordan, Turkey, India. So this is all pretty great stuff. As I said, let us know where you're from in the comments, and please ask questions. Let's move on then. Obviously, the report has highlighted that there are concerns. Consumers are worried about the data. At the same time, customer data is becoming more valuable than ever for businesses. Maybe you can start painting us a picture, Aoife, on why you think that is. Why is personal data so important? How can businesses and governments use customer data and personalized data to give us a better experience, better services, better products? What's your take on this, Aoife?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to look at some of the stats around volumes of data and the value ascribed to it. I think just to get a sense of where there's been exponential growth in data, even in the past couple of years. The European Commission published a data strategy earlier this year, and they gave some numbers in that, and they projected a 530% increase of global data volumes going from 2018 to 2025. And that's a growth of, from 33 zettabytes to 175 zettabytes, if you can get your head around those numbers and volumes. But in terms of value being ascribed to that data, they projected that for 2025, within the EU data economy, that would be worth 829 billion, up from 301 billion in 2018. So I think there can be no doubt about it. Big data means big business and big values attached to that. So to answer your question, why is data so important? I think, put simply, big data sets can reveal valuable insights, which insights can be used to drive better decisions and ignite innovation. And better decision-making and innovation brings promise of enormous benefits both to citizens and businesses. I think for businesses, it means it can lead to productivity gains and resource efficiency, and stimulate the development of new or improved products and services, and allow for a more personalized engagement with their customers. I think on the public sector and on the government side of things, it can lead to better and more efficient services being delivered to citizens. Another couple of examples from that report was real-time traffic avoidance navigation can save up to 730 million hours, which equates to about 20 billion in labor costs. And the same to do with real-time notification of a delayed train can save 27 million working hours. So that equates to about 740 million in labor costs. So you can see the numbers are staggering. I think what's also interesting is within the current environment we're living in and these unprecedented times where we're looking to combat a global health emergency, I think all of us will probably agree we've never seen so much debate about the use of big data and how big data can better serve society and perhaps can better serve governments and help them to make better data-driven decisions. So, every day we hear about the contact tracing apps and technology being used. And we also hear about perhaps telco data or location-based data being used to help governments understand when lockdown restrictions were being effective, or now that they're entering into release of the new phases in terms how effective are those being. And I think having the ability for government to have access to data and to take more data-driven decisions really does help us all from a societal point of view. But at the same time as this debate is going on about access to better data for better data-driven decisions, we also have a very important debate going on, which is how can we realize this potential, but how can we safeguard individuals' privacy rights as well? What are the safeguards that we can deploy which can allow us to utilize big data, but not at the expense of privacy? Because we don't want a public health crisis to turn into a human rights crisis.
Yeah, and I completely agree. So that from a company perspective, they obviously are able to personalize services, and as a consumer, nowadays you would almost get annoyed if customers don't know, if companies don't know you. So you expect them to know you and give you a personalized service. At the same time, you don't want them to spy on you and use it in a way that you don't want to. So striking this balance is I think the key. Roberto, what's your view on how important data, consumer data, and personal data has become, and in particular, how would you define data excellence around this, and the role of privacy that as part of that?
Yeah, so, and here, and Carolyn will probably start to smile now because I'll go off on my tangent of studying philosophy, Greek and Latin in my past, and but the tangent, the real point is that I see this in a very much at if we go higher than the big data, and you start to move away from the clouds of, and not clouds as a infrastructure, but clouds literally the potential obstacle for your view. I think what you need to look at is that what I call a digital neo-humanism. So in reality, what we are finding out is that this data economy that is emerging is such a disruptive force, such a changing force of our world that on one side you might say, thank God we have this in a very complex and interconnected world, because probably the ability for us to observe much finer and much more granular and much complete data set will allow us to optimize better our resources, will allow us to maybe feed all the people we need to feed, or one day data problem we will need to observe our climate problems. But that's kind of the overall view. So data is very important. But if you now go back down, the reality is that the beauty of this is probably epitomized by recital 4 of GDPR. The processing of private data should be done for the purpose of serving mankind. I don't know how many regulations in the world that have mankind citing in that, but I truly understand that, and I truly believe that our role and it's a tricky role, because from a business point of view, you are pursuing some economical return, some outcome, but more and more business are understanding that my economic advantage, progress, my profit without proper corporate social responsibility, without a meaningful mission, makes no sense, because makes me not be seen as the true player of a society that expects a lot. So that's the data plays a part in show that you are really doing what you're saying you're doing for humanity. And the models that we're going to get into to understand how this is done are going to become more and more complex for the boards to understand. So there is all of that. So data excellence is trying to create the fertile soil for people to really be grounded in this new reality. So understanding that there are silos in the company, but there are tribes. They're not physical things in the company, but actually are groups of people that are disagreeing on fundamental meanings of data, and understanding if until people are not agreeing on the way they call things, we cannot really measure our progress, is one thing that data excellence is trying to allow you to do. And then from a methodological point of view, is saying whenever you touch something in the business, whenever you change something in the business, you need to embed all the different facets of data in your methodology. So today we think about the processes and the IT and our infrastructure. We need to think, what is that? If I want to use that data, why I want to use it, and how I'm going to know that the data is good enough for me. And most importantly, after I finish with what I need to do, how do I maintain that maturity or the level of quality I just attained? And you push into this all the different angles, from quality, privacy, retention, access, ability, security. It's actually is a vehicle for you to do the right thing, so that at the end, people can say, I've done this, I got this KPI, and therefore for tomorrow, having fixed 20,000 customer address, I can increase 3% my value and my return on orders. So something like that. Does it make sense? And that's more or less. It's very high level, but that I can talk about this for hours, and Carolyn knows. Sorry, but we don't need you anymore. I see me.
No.
We lost
you.
You.
Now we can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you. We were a bit worried there for a minute.
We are trying to cover all the size and all the.
I was just saying, I just want to go over the stream very briefly and just acknowledge a few people that we have on here. We've got Eileen from the Philippines. We've got Akli from Algeria. We've got Deepak from Fort Worth in Texas. We've got Horatio from Argentina, Sarah from Sweden. We've got Jamie from Malaysia, Elaine from Sydney, Nina from Medellin in Colombia, and we've got Madeline from New York City, Andrea from London, and Eddie from Germany. And Isam from Egypt as well. So a truly global live stream as always. What I now want to do is to explore a little bit how we now strike this balance between using this really important and valuable data in companies and balancing this with protecting their privacy. Very often when we talk about big data, you hear people say, okay, privacy is dead in the big data world. And I would like to see and hear your views on this. Do you believe privacy is dead, or how do companies actually strike this balance and do both, deliver an amazing customer service, real business benefits, while still protecting the privacy and and protecting private data? So, Aoife, what's your view on that? What's your take? How do companies actually do this in practice? What do they do? How can you approach that?
Yeah, I think firstly, this statement that privacy is dead, I think it couldn't be further from the truth. And I say that for a couple of reasons. The first one is what we are seeing now is the emergence of modern data protection laws and regulations around the world, many of them which are taking inspiration from the GDPR. And if you listen to all of the list of countries that you just named in terms of people listening in today, many of those countries will be having new data protection laws or enhanced data protection laws. And Gartner in a study mentioned that by the end of 2023, 80% of businesses will have at least one data protection law that they have to comply with. So in addition, I think we've all mentioned that consumers are increasingly aware of their rights. They've got increased rights, and increasingly they're asking companies to demonstrate to them how those companies are using their data. So I think for those reasons, as I said, privacy is certainly not dead. In fact, it's increasing in terms of importance. So what does this mean for companies? I mean, I think first of all, it absolutely means that companies could no longer treat data protection as some back office compliance issue, and that really it is a board level C-level strategic issue for companies. Companies that have not already done so really need to have proactive strategies and programs which over time will raise customer trust levels by enhancing customer engagement. Companies should really look at enhancing their privacy capabilities deep into their organization, and should look at embracing technology solutions that will better enable them to manage the vast amount of data that flows through their organization, as well as looking at technology solutions that will help them automate some of these data solutions. So I think the good news is, Bernard, is that I think it is possible to use data to gain valuable insights to provide better products and services to your customers, whilst at the same time also respecting privacy. I don't think it's a binary choice of either or. I don't think it's a zero-sum game. And, you know, some of the examples of how companies might do this is if they adopt a pet. And I'm not talking about the small and furry type. I'm talking about privacy-enhancing technologies that are available today and are emerging. So an example of this would be anonymization, whereby you can take data sets, you can depersonalize the personal data, but it still contains very rich data for analytics purposes, and does allow you to see historical trends and allows you then to make better data-driven decisions within your organization. Other examples of privacy-enhancing technologies would be de-identification, pseudonymization, and things like synthetic data that many companies are using nowadays as a way of helping them, for example, do machine learning or helping them test data today. So there are examples, but companies have to be proactive. They have to really understand the importance now of having a strategy and looking to solutions to help them manage the data properly.
Very good. Thank you very much. Caroline, do you have anything to add to that? How do companies get this right? What do they need to do, and what can they actually do in practice?
And I completely agree with everything that Aoife said there. I think for me, it's about them having the right attitude on how they treat this. So we talked about transparency a lot, which is fantastic, and I do want organizations to be transparent, but transparency without clear clarity, about being very simple on the language that we use with people, is really important. And the illustration that I would give is, as a parent, I know you're a parent as well, but if somebody walked up to me in the street and in this kind of language said, I would like to follow your child everywhere they go. I would like to follow them into their bedroom, into their bathroom. I would like to listen to all the conversations with their friends. And if you let me do that, I will give you $50 a week. Now, if I asked you it in that kind of language, I'm pretty sure most parents would go, no, and get away from me. If I wrap that up into 50 pages of legal jargon and make it look like it's for your benefit, while I am technically being transparent, because somewhere in there it will explain that to you, that to me is not real transparency. So transparency without clarity isn't good enough. We have to genuinely want to be clear and straightforward in how we tackle the issue.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And it's nice to hear it in those terms. I think sometimes we have to actually realize that these are real people with real lives, and if companies are starting to collect those data, with this comes a real responsibility, I think.
Yeah, I think, Bernard, just to add to that, I think perhaps too much up until now has been emphasized on individuals and consumers having to read through all these long privacy policies to try and understand what's going on. And frankly, it's too complicated. And there's information asymmetry in terms of what the company knows and what the individual actually can figure out. So I think actually the pendulum is swinging back towards companies themselves having to take responsibility, both from a business perspective, but also from an ethical perspective. Just because you can do something with data doesn't mean you should. And I think the companies now that are taking privacy importantly and strategically, and perhaps they're seeing it as a competitive differentiator, are setting themselves apart. And those are the companies now that are trying to proactively demonstrate to their consumers that they are acting not just within the letter of the law, but I think it's importantly, they're acting within the spirit of the law. And the spirit of data protection regulation is really about protecting individuals and giving them rights. But as I say, there's a lot of information asymmetry between what the company actually knows and what an individual can know. And really to expect individuals to try and figure it all out, I think that's the wrong approach. I think it's really up to the companies now to act responsibly and ethically with the data.
Very good. Caroline.
Sorry, just that really sparks something with me that I think is very important, just to build on it, because we need to make sure that, for me, data literacy is something that's incredibly important. You know, being clear and concise with people is one thing, but we should be helping people understand that there's things that they can learn about data, that, you know, the balance, the trade-off, the compromises they make when they share data. So the more that we talk about this kind of thing, the more we try and help educate in a positive way people about what data means for them, I think is just got to be a good thing.
And sorry.
No, and I was just reading through some of the comments that some of the listeners have put on here, and someone saying,
they're hating us. Are they hating us?
Nobody reads the small print.
Correct.
And what about transparency with visible control that you can change?
And you see, if I was saying about, I love the geometric, so the information, the symmetry, so asymmetry, you said.
Yes.
I was actually talking about an information power imbalance, because I think what I see as part of the journey to what they call, digital sovereignty, right? We will need to get to, and it's also maybe is a product kind of a white space there for someone that comes up with my digital guardian that I can unleash around, or I can set centrally on me, because I'm actually, the data economy is about me producing a lot of data. There are so many sensors around me that I'm actually the one is producing most data and people are interested about, right? Not me personally, but me as a human. So I think the getting to the point in which something can be set centrally from me in a way that I understand. I say, today, I feel my sensitivity to privacy is low. So this something will go around the state of things I'm having and where my data is, and will basically enact that. Today, that bit is the preventer of people trusting more. Because if I had something like that, I will give more data, not less data, to the business that are working with me, because I know that I have control. Today, the uneasiness that Carolyn was presenting is because once it left me, I don't know where it goes. I don't know what people does. And that's the big technological gap we're having here.
Yeah. So how would you then say, should you define, should a data leader define excellence in this context then, Roberto?
The excellence in this context is an excellence that is based on principles, and one of the principles has to be ethical treatment and responsible usage of data. And the charter and the era of the policies of data is dead. I mean, the policy of data is something it's the same problem of clarity that Carolyn was saying. The people are not reading long policies. What you need to go out to your constituencies is with something that is simple. It says, we as a company decide that we want to be good at governing data, good at standardizing it, good at ethically treating it, and we want to be in compliance because we want to play our part. And that is not, disjoined from your company credo. It has to be very much in line with that. So that's the way you bring excellence in the way you do things with data, and the way you make sure that privacy is not dead. Privacy is very alive. And actually, people that believing that because they're doing a B2B business, are not regulated, are not dealing with consumer data, are kidding themselves. Because at the end of a B, there's always a C, right? So there was always human. You're dealing with a human being in the end, and has to be front and center in what you do.
Absolutely. I'm just having a quick look through the stream here. Lots of positive.
So I can see your eyes. You're literally scrolling. There must be a lot going on.
I know there's a lot going on, and people are saying about companies buying data. Will this be illegal? Hopefully in the future.
But again, if we have visibility and control and the ability to shut off things at distance, that can be very well enabled. But the issue is that even between companies, you don't exchange because you don't know. You don't trust fully that when people are saying, yeah, I will make sure that your right to be forgotten is going to be done. How do you know? that what is done thoroughly and completely and sustainably across the company. It's an issue of trust again.
Absolutely, and we keep coming back to trust, and I think this is so important that, as you all said, companies have the right principles, they have the right processes in place, they have the right technology in place, and over time they build trust. For me, it's a bit like building trust in a relationship or friendship. This has to grow over time,
but you know why it's even more important? Because in a digital world, you go back to a little bit what was the motto of the city. Dicum meum pactum, means my word is my bond. If we don't have this binding agreement on what we believe to be the data and how we do this, the digital is gone because it's virtual. It disappears. So that's the issue there.
Very good. So some very sensible tips here. In terms of then turning this into reality, we need data leaders, we need data visionaries that can take data, use it effectively, but at the same time protect people's privacy. And Truata has just published a list of their 100 data visionaries to celebrate people that are innovators in this space, but they're also protecting people's privacy. Aoife, do you want to summarize some of the findings or some of the background of this and why you felt it was important to publish?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is such a new area, and just being on the call today with Carolyn and Roberto and listening to them talk about, when they took on roles as chief data officers or working with data, they're very much trying to figure it out as they go and show leadership and develop these principles within organizations. So, in Truata, we felt it was important to recognize that there are some great champions within the industry who are at the forefront of driving change. And we wanted to celebrate those individuals and showcase how they are doing what they are doing, and use that as a way for others then to learn. If they get to see what good looks like, it allows all of what is this essentially new role, new industry to continue to grow and evolve and improve. And what we'll also be doing is, in following up our global consumer report, we'll now be doing an executive state of mind report where we'll be interviewing the data visionaries and really getting them to share with us some of their thoughts and ideas and positions. And as I say, that's a way of shining a light on this and on these great leaders.
Very good, Carolyn. What would you say makes a real data visionary for you?
Well, for me, it comes back to some of the conversations we had quickly before we came live on air about this whole idea of it's still an evolving field. So you can suffer a little bit from imposter syndrome. So for me, the data visionary is the people that basically stuck their head above the parapet. They've went, I think this, and they've tried to do something so that they can share their knowledge with everybody else. And they've just gone that little bit extra. So they haven't focused down. They've really focused on not only doing what they're supposed to do, but that bit extra, and to make sure that everybody moved forward. And that's, for me, what makes a true visionary. It's part of being a cheerleader.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Roberto, how do data leaders keep up then with all of this and with data excellence?
I think I love the comment about the visionaries, because what I see also, we are all, and I was absolutely, elated by the type of profile that came through, because there are a lot of people that I'm sure are suffering of the same syndrome I suffer, which is the Cassandra syndrome. Cassandra was given the gift to see the future, but nobody believed her. That was the curse of the gods. So I think these people are needing to gel together, because once there are 100 people having more or less a vision and going in the same direction, the whole industry will get a bit more not credibility, but a bit more traction. Because the issue is that sometimes it's difficult to explain things, because people they've been sitting so long in the issues they're having. And again, from an excellence point of view, you will appreciate, we call something data debt. So there is a debt of data that is actually proportional to the disorder of data that's been mounting over the years, that people are now blind to. So they have been doing things that actually trying to, squirrel around mountains of bad data just because it's now as a normal life. And that's where people like us come in and say, are you sure about that? Look, there is a different way. And they say, no, that's the way I've been going through the last 20 years. Why should I change? And that's where the struggle for the visionaries is. So having a vision and having a compelling case for change. It's a toast to them. It's a big toast to them, and I love the fact that we had 100, but of course we had many more than 100. But in the future, probably would be 200. I don't know. The more the merrier.
Very good. I'm just having a little look at some of the questions in the stream, and we can come back to them. Some of those questions, I would just want to highlight them to you three, so we can discuss this later. Someone asking about any companies that you feel are doing this right and getting this right. Some comments around facial recognition. People were having concerns about that. People still feel that GDPR is not real, that lots of companies are pretending to adhere to this, but not really doing it. A few comments around the differences between different countries and different regions and how they approach privacy. And then people asking about the sources of some of the reports and stuff that we mentioned. So let's come back to some of those if you're happy with them. Before we do this, just looking ahead then and say, okay, if we look at the future of privacy, what would you predict will happen in the future? If you look over the horizon and say, okay, in terms of the future of privacy, will it become less important, more important? What developments do you see? Caroline, do you want to kick this off?
Okay. So I think the key word for me when it comes to privacy in the future would be choice. I think privacy will be incredibly important in the future, but it will get to the point where almost our data becomes a currency. So we choose the level of privacy that we're happy to live with for the service that we want. So for me, I think that would be my prediction for the future.
And do you feel that companies like Facebook, for example, are getting this right? Do you feel that people feel that there's an honest trade-off, for example, between the data they're giving them and the service they're getting in return?
I think that's when education comes into it, because I'm not convinced people realize that they're paying for that service with data in the majority at the moment. So I think that a lot of people got caught up with, isn't this great? I can connect with my friends. I can, order pizza locally, whatever it is that they're doing with it. And the realization is only coming to the fore now that it's not a free service. You pay for that service with the data. And I think being able to customize it in the future to your tolerance is going to be more and more important.
Very good. Roberto, what's your take on that? What are the predictions for the future?
Prediction. I mean, I can tell you like more tax and something like the typical. And these two shall pass, right? That's one. But no, the reality is the future is. I see a future in which the way we do things have to be, as Carolyn was saying, take into account of this as a norm. So compliant. The issue that I was seeing a few on the chat is people are still thinking regulation or compliance is something I do when I finish doing everything else. Right. So the concept here is that no, you need to equip yourself to be a better business while you are complying. And that's in the future is going to be an expectation, because if without that, your effectiveness, your speed to market will be severely, severely hampered, because you're going to be in a future of more data localization, more data restrictions, more data expectations. So there is all more and more. So in the future, there is such a complex future, but is again, back to my digital neo-humanism thing, is the right future in which we're going to start to solve the real problem of humanity, and not just how many systems I'm having in my estate, but how do I really connect my mission to ethical, and my corporate social responsibility. Is a future that where the best position companies can acquire is to know who they are from their data. If I know what I do, what did I use, where it goes, where it is, how it's classified, where it sits, well, all of that, right? Imagine a mirror on the wall in which you can say, show me who I am today through my data. That's a future in which every question is going to be thrown at you. You have a chance at answering. And that's where your customer expectations are going to be. You cannot going to be able to say, well, it's going to take 30 days to delete your records. I say, what? 30 days for deleting my records? Seriously? So that's the future I see.
Very good. Yeah, and for me, I was just scribbling a few notes down for myself as well. So what I see in the future is that personal data will become much more important, much more valuable. I think we will move to a world of much more granular data. Companies like Google are talking about micro moments, so they're understanding what we want at this particular point in time, and then they're able to serve us products and services in that time. We'll see more mass personalization, I think. But for me, this has to be earned by trust and transparency. They are the two key words for me. And this comes with, I think, for me, what Caroline said, you used the word that I would have used, choice, giving consumer the choice to delete their data, control their data. So there is a real two-way relationship. So this is, Aoife, anything that you would like to add? What's your prediction?
Yeah, I probably take quite a, I suppose, as a passionate advocate for privacy, I probably take quite a philosophical view on it. And for me, the idea of privacy as it relates to autonomy and human dignity and recognizing it as a fundamental human right, I think it's going to be even more important in the future, and also more important that we pay attention to it. So back into the things you talk about, Bernard, when you talk about emerging technologies like mass adoption of AI and IoT and sensors and 5G and wearables and under the skin technologies, these are all about the collection and mining of data and creating rich profiles of individuals. And although we think that I think every generation feels that emerging technologies are transformative, I do think that these technologies are a step change from what has happened in the past for a couple of reasons. One, because of the nature of the scale and the scalability of these technologies, but also because of the ubiquitousness and the pervasiveness of these technologies and how that they seep into both of our professional lives and our personal lives, and how they influence us in ways that are not very opaque, in ways we don't really understand. And I think you've talked about Professor Klaus Schwab, who introduced the phrase of the fourth industrial revolution. And he talked about the fact that changes are so profound from the perspective of human history that there's never been a time of greater promise or potential peril. And I think that whilst most people agree that technology for technology's sake is a poor idea, I think we really do need to be very thoughtful as a collective society about what we want these technologies to serve us as a society, and to talk about the amount of data collected and mined and how it will serve the collective good. I personally don't think it's an overstatement to say that safeguarding privacy and human autonomy is going to be one of the most important challenges of the fourth industrial revolution. And I would frame the debate very simply. How do we maximize the benefits of technology and big data whilst also minimizing the potential harms? So how can we use big data to build greener and cleaner cities with better transportation? How can we use data to provide personalized medicine that helps us live longer, healthier lives, and use it, to prevent deaths from things like malaria? On the flip side, how can we ensure we safeguard our autonomy as humans and our dignity and prevent its erosion, and particularly from intrusive surveillance, which nudges and manipulates us in ways that are just not opaque and transparent and ways we can comprehend. And I'll finish with a thought. I was reading a journal the other day, the MIT Technology Review, and I didn't realize that, in fact, everyone's heart is different, and like your iris or like your fingerprint, we each have a unique cardiac signature that can be used in a way to tell us apart. And unlike your face or your gait, it remains constant and cannot be altered or disguised. And critically, our unique cardiac signature can be detected from a distance. And it was reported in this MIT review that a new device had been developed by the Pentagon that can identify a person without seeing their face, and instead it detects their unique cardiac rhythm from an infrared laser, and it can work at 200 meters away. And it's likely over time that that distance can lengthen as the lasers improve. So this is an incredibly new, innovative tech, and it could be used for different uses. So for example, it could be used by a doctor to detect arrhythmias and other conditions remotely in a patient, or it could mean in a hospital situation that patients don't need to be wired up to machines so that you can remotely check their cardiac rhythms. On the other hand, and somebody mentioned it earlier about facial recognition and some of the concerns about facial recognition, how could we ensure that this type of technology wouldn't be used for covert surveillance of individuals and of citizens in ways, again, that we don't really comprehend? So it's an example of tech that can be used for different uses. And I think we do need to understand, as we release technology, what are the potential benefits, but also the potential harms, and be very mindful of those harms as we release technologies.
Very good point. Thank you. And I was just looking at the comments here, people saying that they found this really interesting. Nick saying extremely interesting conversation. Thank you.
Happy birthday. Someone has actually
yes,
celebrated his birthday today.
I was just about to Ephraim, happy birthday to you. He was just saying, sharing with us his birthday today. And I think, Aoife, you've got a fan here, William, saying that all of the was an excellent summary by you and on the impact and concerns, and they were all really good points. As I say, anyone on the stream, if you have any other questions, drop them in here. As I said, some of the questions I've picked up around examples of companies that you feel are doing this right and getting this right, the balance between privacy and value. Any views on how real GDPR actually is and how much it is protecting organizations, which then I guess links us to the difference in different countries. GDPR only applies to people in the European Union. We see how, for me, on the one hand side, I see China using a lot of data on a straight state-controlled level. In the US, I see data companies having complete freedom to use whatever data they want. I think we're slowly seeing some regulations creeping in then places like California, when then you see the EU, which has the most stringent regulations, and some people say there's almost too much regulations, too much red tape, which is holding companies back. So, and any views on this? Any of you, if you have any views on any of those points?
It's back to the point I was making. The company has to one of the two principles. First, regulations are not born the day before they come into force, right? So usually you have some time to see them coming. So good early warning system helps, because what the next thing you want to do, you couple the regulation, you should decode the regulation on a sort of a signature, or if you want to be talking like a teacher, in learning objectives. The regulation will want you to learn to do something different, and those you have to find through your understanding, awareness of what you are as a business from its data, its process and technology. You can actually, if you see that coming early enough, you can embed those learning objectives to make you a better business. I mean, look at the process register in GDPR, right? For the people who are familiar, it's a list that from a regulatory point of view you have to keep. And people that are keeping just a list to show the regulator are making a disservice to themselves, because that list is actually a wealth of information you can use to do impact analysis for breach, do impact analysis for change, or to evaluate simplification exercises across the company. So it's down to us to make the regulation be part of our strategy, not the other way around. The regulators will never be strategic, because they are physiologically reacting to something. So it's down to the companies to have their physiological reaction assimilated and becoming a strength.
but it's also about interpretation of the regulations as well. So even though GDPR applies supposedly uniformly across the EU, it doesn't really, because different countries have interpreted it in subtly different ways. So I know some are following it like it's the letter of the law, and others are using it as a guidance towards the state that they want to be in.
And not forgetting that the regulations around the data, not the geography. So if it's me living in Brazil and I'm a European citizen, I'm still having the rights that GDPR got. So that's people,
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So
and I think, Bernard, sorry, go ahead, Carolyn.
I was just dealing with that level of complexity when it comes to GDPR. But one very, very positive thing is I genuinely do not believe we would be having the conversations that we have around data if it hadn't been for this kick-starting the need for us to do something, which is an incredibly positive stance, I believe.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you, Caroline. I think one of the I think there was two main achievements of the GDPR so far, and that was one, it caused companies often for the first time to do housekeeping on data, understand where their data is, where it resides, what they've gathered it for, what they're using it for, and to find some justification for having it. And I think it raised awareness with individuals and citizens and consumers to understand a little bit more about their rights and to ask some questions. But I was just looking at our consumer state of mind survey, Bernard, and just on that point, 59% think most companies don't believe in the importance of data regulation, and they just see it as a tick box exercise. So what does that show? It shows perhaps that, you know, us companies have done a poor job in explaining to individuals about the data that we have and how we do take data, responsibility importantly. And I think it goes back to some of the points Caroline was making earlier, the importance of transparency and being clear in being able to articulate easily and in an understandable way to consumers what you are doing with their data. So I think companies have more work to do in order to build up that level of trust that they so eagerly want with their consumers.
Yeah, totally agree.
Anyone, before we come to an end, anyone feels that they have examples of organizations that are getting this right?
Well, the different organizations, I think in data, it's a continuous journey of permanent augmentation. I don't think you get ever to a point in which you say, I got it right. And in my experience, everyone is on a journey at different point, and the ones that are ahead of the journey, they're ahead of the journey because the environment around them forced them to be. So it's very difficult to be, the businesses today will be in a perfect state of data without external stimuli to do that.
But they can be less wrong. So
sorry?
I said, but they can be less wrong. So it's not necessarily about being right, because I think where we are and where being right is.
English is not my first language, but I didn't know less wrong can be said, but it's okay.
You know what? Shakespeare can invent words and phrases.
Yeah, poetic license, yeah.
Yeah,
I suppose, Bernard, you could look to the data visionaries as being examples of some of these individuals who are leading the companies, and it'll be interesting to read the Executive State of Mind report, where we get these individuals to share with us what are their best practices, and this way we can all learn together.
Let's put it this way: you do, Bernard, do the annual kind of a review or annual communication to the shareholder test. Go pick any one company, check, go and do a search for data quality or data governance or data, so whatever, and see how many of those are actually mentioning that in the right context. Because if it's not important enough for them to tell to their shareholders, maybe they're not there yet.
I think that what we need is some kind of food standard agency for data. So we have
you have some of the traffic light, right? So, yeah.
So for me, I've been, when this question come up, have you got any good examples? I have lots of examples of companies that I've worked with that I feel are doing this pretty well. But would I really stick my neck out now and say they're doing it well on air? And I think it's an interesting point that none of us are actually able to do that. So maybe we're not quite there yet. One of the companies that I've helped to develop their data strategy is Shell. I think they're doing this pretty well. They're taking privacy extremely seriously, and I know that Dan Javins ended up as one of the data visionaries on the report. So I think, Aoife, what you said is right. I would would recommend everyone listening, have a look at the Global Consumer State of Mind report. Have a look at the 100 data visionaries. They are makes great reading, and get in touch with those and build a community. What I would suggest that we come to an end here. Thank you so much for joining me, Aoife, Roberto, and Caroline. That has been a super interesting and insightful session. Lots of positive comments. What would be great is if you are heading into those comments, if there are any questions that you want to answer, if you just go to my LinkedIn profile, you see this, and then you can look through the questions and maybe do this over the next few days once we've had all the viewers up there. So thank you very much. Super interesting discussion, super interesting topic, and I will hopefully see you soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Bernard.
Thank you, Bernard. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.